Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. This week we're looking at the 7 deadly sins, and the first of those is pride. And there are many who consider pride to be the source of all the others. Savonarola, the great preacher of the 16th century, one day saw an elderly woman worshiping the statue of Mary in the cathedral. The next day he noticed her there on her knees again, and he observed that she was there day after day. Once he whispered to a fellow priest, "Look how devout she is." But the priest responded, "Don't be deceived. Years ago, when the artist was commissioned to sculpture this statue, he sought a young woman to pose as his model. Finally, he found the perfect girl and the statue was cut. The girl became this woman. Shortly after the statue was put there, she began to visit it, and she has worshiped there ever since." That's pride. Pride is arrogant self-worship. It is exalting oneself and placing one's own interests above the interests of others. And that's why this sin is the source of all the others. Those with pride will do almost anything in the effort to keep it. Pride destroys our relationships with others. The Bible tells us we ought to place more value in others than ourselves and to value God most of all. But pride is just the opposite. It is self-centered and self-fulfilling. Pride seeks to do for me and to get from me the absolute best. Status, possessions, wealth, respect, even if it comes at the expense of others. What's worse is that at its heart, pride forces us to deceive ourselves. Pride gives us a false sense of importance and the thought that we are indispensable and that the whole world revolves around us. And we fool ourselves into believing that. But the worst thing of all about pride is what it does to our relationship with God. Our false sense of self-importance puts us in God's place. In our pride, we make idols of ourselves, serving us, worshiping us, instead of God. And even if we do acknowledge God and give God his place, we still like to think we are worthy of salvation. We're proud of our goodness and often feel that we deserve to go to heaven. All that gets in the way of the truth. All that gets in the way of us realizing that we are sinners, terribly, terribly in need of God's love, God's mercy, and God's grace, terribly, terribly in need of redemption. All that deceives us about our need before God. In our self-righteousness, we are blind to our sin. Pride, worst of all, stands between us and God. Once there was a newly elected congressman just off the train in Washington, D.C. He was visiting the home of a ranking senator and trying to make sense of the bizarre world of the Capitol. As they stood on the senator's porch looking out over the Potomac River, an old, deteriorating log floated by. The senator said, "Son, if you want to understand this city, take a look at that log. There are probably more than 100,000 grubs, ants, bugs, and critters on that old log as it floats down the river, and I imagine that every one of them thinks that he's steering it." That's what pride does to us. Let's let go of our pride. Take hold of God and let God do the driving. Thanks for watching. And remember to let this day belong to God.